Hi, my name's James Campbell. I'm a writer. You probably knew that. People ask me a lot about whether I write with a pen and a notebook or write onto a laptop. And they also ask me, what do I think they should do? I think you should do whatever you want to. If you're writing, that's cool. But it got me thinking about the differences. Now, I love writing with a pen. I love watching the words come out of the pen onto the paper. I don't know why, I just like it. But when I'm writing with a pen, I have to write really quickly because it's very hard to get everything down quickly, isn't it? And that makes my handwriting messy, and then often I can't read what I've written, and that's a complete waste of time. So when you go onto a computer or an iPad or tablet or something, or even a phone with your thumbs, then the good thing about that is at least you can read it because it doesn't matter what your handwriting is like. But then it occurred to me there's this thing though that's different with regard to mistakes. Okay, now I'm not sure that mistakes are a real thing. Okay, if you're doing maths and you say that 7 times 6 is 43, that's a mistake. But if you're being creative, if you're writing and you write something that's a mistake, it often isn't a mistake. It's obviously just an interesting way of looking at things. So let's say, for example, that I'm writing a story about a dragon, okay? And I go, right, I've got a pen and a paper, and I write it down. Once upon a time, there was a dragon, and he lived in a teapot. And then I think to myself, a dragon cannot live in a teapot. That's just silly, right? It would be too big. Okay, so I cross out teapot, and I write castle instead. And the castle was big and scary, and he was big and scary, and then blah, blah, blah. And then after a while, I might just sort of run out of steam, and then I might think, there isn't really a story here, but it's in my notebook, I'll leave it, and I'll come back to it another time. And then I come back to it another time, maybe a month later, maybe a year later, maybe 10 years later, I'm up in the loft and I find a box of my old notebooks, and I open it up and it says, oh, that dragon story, yeah, that didn't go anywhere, did it? Because it was a bit lame, but I'll read it again. What's it say? Once upon a time there was a dragon and he lived in a castle, but then I see it said teapot, and then I crossed it out, but the teapot's still there. And I think, imagine if a dragon did live in a teapot. It would have to be a tiny teapot, obviously. So maybe you can have like a cafe and there's lots of teapots. Oh, in each teapot there's a tiny dragon, different types of dragons. And then you put cold water in the teapot and the dragons heat the water up. And then the tea you get has got different sort of magical abilities. So witches and wizards and warlocks and all that lot go to this magical cafe and they order a particular type of dragon tea. And then it's like a potion, and they might have oh yes, I'll have the invigorating fire dragon tea. And they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Or they'd get like a tea that makes them fly, or a tea that makes them invincible, or maybe they make poisonous tea out of different dragons. So now we've got an idea for a story, which is about like a cafe for magical people run by a child. A child runs this. Why does the child run this? Because his grandparents taught him how to look after the tiny dragons and make tea. And this is turning into an idea for a story, isn't it? Now let's imagine that I'd done that on a laptop instead. So I'm going to write a story, tap, tap, tap. Once upon a time there was a dragon and he lived in a teapot. No, that's a silly idea. It would be too small. So what do? I backspace. And teapot disappears. I type castle, and the castle was big and grey and boring and blah, 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 and I get bored. And then later on I'm looking through my computer and I see a file called Dragon Story, and I open it up. And I go, oh, I'd forgotten about that. It didn't really go anywhere, did it? What does it say? Once upon a time there was a dragon, he lived in a castle and blah, blah, blah. And no, it's not very good, is it? Because the teapot has disappeared. Because I didn't cross it out. I deleted it. Now I know there are ways in different word processing programs where you can keep all of the things that you've changed and all the rest of it, but that's a bit complicated. But that's just one of the differences between writing with a pen and writing on a laptop. So I suppose the ideal thing to do is to write once in a pen in a notebook and then type it up onto your computer so that people can read it. That's probably what I do. I do that for half of the time. Once I get a story going, I then tend to go straight onto the laptop. But it just goes to show, doesn't it, that what you think might be a mistake can often be a whole new world of a story. So when you're being creative, there's no such thing as a mistake. So, get a pen, get a notebook, and go and make some mistakes.